It is great to be back in this room. Not that I didn't love spending the time with the teens, but all good things must come to an end. And now we're back. I feel not nearly as nervous standing in front of you all as it is standing in front of a bunch of teens that don't laugh at my jokes. They just think I'm dumb. So thank you for laughing at my jokes. Thank you. So as I announced a couple weeks ago, we're going to do a 4-week kind of mini series on this seminar that I provide for churches all over the country. I've taught this at various gospel meetings and lectureships, and churches have me come in. The elders allow me to go around doing this twice a year, and I try to fill those every year if I can. And hopefully that this will be a blessing to you. Some of this stuff might be difficult to hear. You should probably already know that just given the subject matter. But it is an important issue. It is an important subject that we are dealing with, not just in the world today, but in the church today. Because what happens in the world echoes in the church. We know that. And so this is something that if it has not already affected you, it will. Or your loved ones, your kids, in some shape or fashion. So as we begin, this is what I want us to keep in mind here. I'll be referring back to this several times throughout this seminar, throughout this study, and because it is so true. Much of our sin is simply an effort to gain by selfish means the satisfaction or security that God has promised to give us freely. This is so often times is where things get twisted in our minds, where we take a beautiful gift from God and twist it to our own selfish desires, and all sorts of things can happen because of it. What are we going to cover? Or I guess why are we here? What are we hoping to do? First is to educate. Obviously, there is a lot of information out there, and you never know what you're going to get if you just Google pornography information, right? That can be a very dangerous search for yourself. You don't know what's going to happen, what's going to pop up on there, and then it gets in the algorithm, and then you're it's just a mess, right? There's a lot of information out there and to filter through it all. That's why I want to do this, and so you don't have to. Besides that, pornography is everywhere. It's on phones, computers, billboards. It is one of these kind of sins that you don't have to go looking for to find it. It will find you. If you've ever been the victim of opening up one of these emails before and you're like, what is this? Oh, great. You will encounter it, and it will affect your life in some way. Secondly, yes, ma'am. The second thing is to expose. Because this sin is so prevalent in the world today, we, as the church, as people, we need to get comfortable talking about it. In Ephesians 5:11 it says, "Take no part in the unfruitful deeds of darkness, but instead," what? Expose them, right? It's really hard to expose these type of things if it's so icky we don't want to touch it with an 11-foot pole. And so we need to get comfortable talking about it. If we're going to talk about it, then let's actually talk about it. And so in this series, we're not going to be using innuendos when we talk about pornography. We're not going to be using ambiguous words to keep it in the dark, because I believe that when we do that, it gives it more power than it deserves. And we're adults. We should be able to talk about these things. And so saying words like pornography and masturbation and sex, we should be able to do that. We're adults, and if we want to address the problem, well, then let's address it. Let's not kind of, skirt around the edges here and give it more power than it actually deserves. Next is I'm here to encourage. Whether you struggle with pornography yourself or you have loved ones who do, I know, because I know the statistics, that there are a lot of people in this room, and there are a lot of people that come into this auditorium every Sunday that struggle. It's just the facts. It's the statistics. And I know that those people who are struggling have been struggling in secret for perhaps a very long time. And I want to give those people, whether it's you or a loved one, I want you to know that help is out there. There is a way out, and that hope is real. Throughout this series, whether at the end of it or while we were going through it, if you have questions, I would ask that you please keep them until the end. Come see me outside of here if you need to talk. I am a counselor, and so if you have questions or want clarification, or if you want help yourself, please come and talk. But I think the easiest way to begin this, keeping everything kind of right here in the Bible, is to start with probably the most infamous case of sexual sin that we have in the Bible. In 2 Samuel 11, verses 1 through 3, many of us know this text well. It says, "In the spring of the year, the time when kings go out to battle, David sent Joab and his servants with him, and all Israel, and they ravaged the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, but David remained at Jerusalem. It happened late one afternoon, when David arose from his couch and was walking on the roof of the king's house, that he saw from the roof a woman bathing, and the woman was very beautiful. And David sent and inquired about the woman, and one said, 'Is not this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite?'" The wife of Uriah. Now, if you're just reading through 2 Samuel up to this point, you really have had no inkling or information as to who this random person is. Who's Uriah? Well, the great thing about the Bible, and what I tell people that I'm studying with, is that the Bible explains itself. You just have to keep reading. And later on in 2 Samuel, those of you who know me well, we get one of my favorite parts in the entire Bible when we get information about David's mighty men. If you turn over to 2 Samuel chapter 23 is where we get it. I'm going to start reading about verse 8. And we get some awesome Bible stuff here. That makes me ask a ton of questions, and I hope that these people are in heaven because I want to meet some of them. It says, "These are the names of the mighty men whom David had. Josheb-Basshebeth, a Techmonite. He was chief of the three. He wielded his spear against 800 whom he killed at one time." That's the introduction here. Pretty cool. Had a spear, killed 800 people at the same time. It continues on. It says, "And next to him, among the three mighty men, was Eleazar, the son of Dodo, son of Ahoihai. He was with David when they defied the Philistines, who were gathered there for battle, and the men of Israel withdrew. He rose and struck down the Philistines until his hand was weary, and his hand clung to the sword. And the Lord brought about a great victory that day, and the men returned after him only to strip the slain." Okay, now we're getting a little more detail. This guy, Eleazar, the son of Dodo, he wielded his sword so long that his hand couldn't let go of it, right? Just awesome stuff. It continues on, and next to him was Shammah, the son of Agi, the Herite. The Philistines gathered together at Lehi. There was a plot of ground full of lentils, and the men fled from the Philistines, but he took his stand in the midst of the plot and defended it and struck down the Philistines, and the Lord worked a great victory. Apparently, Shammah, he liked beans, right? He was like, these are my beans. You're not taking my beans. I'm here to make a stand, and he did that, right? We get down in verse 18. It says, now Abishai, the son of Joab, the son of Zeruiah, was chief of the 30, and he wielded his spear against 300 men and killed them and won a name beside the 3. He was the most renowned of the 30, and he became their commander, but he did not attain to the 3. Again, another guy that had a spear. And then maybe my favorite of the bunch, Benaiah, in verse 20, the son of Jehoiada, was a valiant man of Kibzol, a doer of great deeds. He struck down 2 Ariels of Moab. He also went down and struck down a lion in a pit on a day when snow had fallen. And he struck down an Egyptian, a handsome man. The Egyptian had a spear in his hand, but Benaiah went down with a staff and snatched the spear out of the Egyptian's hand and killed him with his own spear. These things did Benaiah the son of Jehoiada, and won a name beside the three mighty men. He was renowned among the 30, but he did not attain to the 3, and David set him over his bodyguard. Jehoiada is awesome. I mean, he says that he struck down 2 Ariels. We don't even know what that means. But the writer of Second Samuel thought it was so noteworthy that we needed to know, even though we don't know what an Ariel is. But he struck down 2 of them. He went down into a pit with a lion on a snowy day. I feel like, today you think about that, what we came to church in, and it's like, this guy is awesome. He killed an Egyptian, a handsome man. He's not just killing ugly people, he's killing the handsome ones too. These are the mighty men. These were the chief of the 30, right? The ones that kind of stood above the rest. But I would imagine that the other 30 of them were also just as valiant and awesome. They were like ninja SWAT team special forces guys, right? And this was what David had. These were his own personal fighting force, that when David stepped out into the battlefield, it was these guys were his personal guard, and they went and did missions together. In the middle there, the part that I skipped, you should go back and read it, but it talks about, in verses 13 through 17, it talks about this time where he was with his mighty men, and he was like, oh, I'm so thirsty. Remember that water that we had from that one well? And they were like, okay, let's go. We're going to go get this water. It's behind enemy lines. Doesn't matter. We're going to go get this water. And they bring it back to David. And he said, here, you said you were thirsty for this water. Here you go. And David's like, I can't even drink it. And he pours it out before his men. And it's just like, this is awesome. This is like, I don't know. Maybe it's just this is what I want to be, right? The man in me. I want to be a mighty man. After this section, in verses 24 and following, you get just a wall of names. It's just all of these mighty men. This person, son of this person, son of this person. If you come all the way down to verse 34, the last part of it, we get a name that we are familiar with at this point in 2 Samuel. Eliam, the son of Ahithophel, the Gilonite. Who was Eliam? Bathsheba's father. And the last mentioned, verse 39, almost as an afterthought, and of course we've been through 2 Samuel up to this point, so we know Uriah the Hittite. Why do I point this out? I point it out because, again, these were the mighty men of David. Is there a chance, because of how close he was to his mighty men and the things that they did and how well they knew each other, is there a chance that David already knew Bathsheba, being the wife of Uriah, one of his closest soldiers? Yeah, there's a chance. Yeah, right? Absolutely there's a chance. Is there a chance that David set this up? Yeah. The rest of the story we know. David gives into his lust. He invites this woman into his house. She's not going to say no because David's the king. The king gets what he wants. He tries to cover up his sin. He brings Uriah home. He tries to send Uriah back to his house to sleep with his wife to cover up his sin because Bathsheba is pregnant now. That's not going to work because Uriah is so honorable that he's not going to go sleep with his wife because his men are back in battle and they can't sleep with their wives. David then sinks to a new low and says, I'm going to get him drunk, and so his inhibitions will be lowered, and then obviously, drunk men, he's going to go sleep with his wife. Then even through the drunkenness, he still wouldn't do it because his men are out on the battlefield. Then David, thinking that he only has one thing left to do, he writes a note to the general and says, when you're in fighting, put Uriah at the front and then draw back from him so he'll be killed. Uriah himself is the one who carries his own death note to the front lines to the general and hands it over to him. Uriah dies. Bathsheba moves in. Their child that they had together dies. It's a great tragedy. Murder, deception, adultery, death, drunkenness, premeditated betrayal. Uriah loved David, and David betrayed that love and trust and killed him. It's one of the great tragedies of the Bible. The story teaches us three things. Number one, the lengths a man will go to in order to cover up his sin. David, the things that he does, it's just despicable. It's disgusting, right? The things that he's like, I'm caught. What am I going to do about this? And he sinks deeper and deeper and deeper. Number two, that we can be our own worst enemies at times. There was no, other times in the Bible we get this, highly spiritualized, Satan is definitely at work and he's drawing people away, and it's like David did this of his own accord. He thought it up, and we can too. We can be our own worst enemies at times. And number three, sexual sin in the life of a man of God destroys everything it touches. And I'm sure as David is standing there holding his dead baby, his dead son, thinking of all these things that led up to this moment, he thought to himself, how did I get here? But his story, for a lot of us, is all too familiar. I grew up in middle-class America in a small town in Nebraska. 413 people in our village was Malcolm. And my first exposure to pornography happened when I was 10 years old. When I was 10, back in the day, there wasn't internet around at that time. And so I was playing with our neighbor, and her father was, he rode a Harley Davidson. He worked on cars. He had this big garage on their property where he, did all of his mechanic type stuff. And we were playing in there one day, and she said, "Hey, you want to come back and see my dad's back room?" I said, "Sure, why not?" And we walked in there, and she showed me. And what this guy had done, he's basically taken Playboy centerfolds and used it as wallpaper. And it was like there was not a place in this room that you couldn't see some type of nudity or pornography. As a 10-year-old, of course, at that point, it was kind of feeling all sorts of things, right? This is dangerous, or this is kind of exciting. This is interesting. And at 10 years old, that developed a thirst in me of, I want to see more of that. A couple years later, in my neighborhood, there was a boy that was a couple years older than me. I think he was 16. at the time. And in the course of our playing and roughhousing, there was one day where he said, we're going to do something different. And he looked at me with a look that said everything's going to be different from this day on. He told me the things that he was going to do to me, and he told me the things that I was going to do to him. And I did it. My body reacted, and I was disgusted with myself. I hated myself. I thought, what is wrong with me? And so I buried it. I buried it deep, deep down, thinking that if I forget that this actually happened, then it just didn't happen. But it did. Around that time, my best friend, he also had a dad that rode Harley Davidson, and I'm not stereotyping here, but he had a stack of Playboys in his house, and I remember I was like drawn like a moth to a flame with that stack of Playboys. A few years later, we got the internet, good old America Online, in our house. And if you guys remember the infantile days of the internet, there wasn't really, at least this wasn't the big selling point of the internet, was like web pages. It was chat rooms, right? It was like you get into a chat room and say, hey, I'm this person, I live in this state, I'm this many years old, and then it's just like you just start talking, right? It's like, you're in Wisconsin? Like, whoa, this is crazy. You're out in California? Incredible. And then inevitably there was chat rooms where people would have pornographic images, and they would trade them like trading cards. And I stumbled upon those, and I became really good at finding these images and hiding them on our family computer. Maybe a year later, we got satellite TV in the house, and I don't know if my mom didn't know what she paid for, but me and my brothers, there's 900 channels on there. Do you think we looked at every 900 one of those channels? You better believe it, right? I got to know what's on this TV. And one of the channels that was on there was actually a very hardcore pornographic station. It became me and my brother's like little secret that we knew about. And so around this time in high school, I was the one in the locker room that was always bragging about the things that I saw, and being overly sexualizing everything. I was that kid in the locker room talking about the things that I've experienced and seen. And what I know now is because of my abuse that happened to me. There's one of two ways that typically happens with same-sex sexual abuse. One is that you dive further into that, what happened. That you start to view that as attractive and arousing to you. The other way in which you can go is called overcompensation. And so, because you don't want anyone to know that that's who you are, and that's that this is what happened to you, you overcompensate, going the other direction, saying even though you don't know it and they don't know it, I was overcompensating, so that no one had a thought in their minds that I would ever be into something like that, having same-sex attraction, and I didn't. But I was overcompensating. At 15, I got invited to come to a Bible camp, Nebraska youth camp. And, people ask me, like why do you love camp so much? What is it about? What is it about camp? And I can tell you, that camp rescued me. When I didn't even know that I needed it, it saved me. I started listening to the to the messages out there, to the gospel, that regardless of what happened, that God still loves me, even when I didn't love myself. And so I became a Christian at 16, July 2nd, 2002. I was immersed for the forgiveness of my sins. And I mean, I came out of that water. The water might have been boiling because I came out on fire. I was, I mean, it was like the world needs to hear about this message and just how incredible it is, and that the forgiveness is a real thing. And on fire as I came home from camp, and I knew then that was like all this pornography stuff, it needs to go. It can't happen anymore. Not only is it, I knew it was bad, but now I knew that it was sin, right? Like, and this, I don't want to be separated from my God. I want to be with Him. I want to be one with Him. And so it started, as much as I wished everything would have changed right then and there, it didn't. It just started a new cycle. It was like, go to camp, and people who have gone to camp, that camp high that you get on, and it's just like, all right, I'm going to be completely different, and that would last maybe for a month. You go to a youth rally and, get a little sense of that again, and, you might be good for a couple weeks. Hear a good sermon, rededicate myself again, might be good for a week. But it was like I kept on crawling back to the same old thing, the same sin over and over and over again. And this cycle would last. After our freshman year of college, Alicia and I got married. Second best decision that I ever made. And at that time, I had told her that, hey, I have a history with pornography. I just want you to know that before we get married, that this is a thing. And both her and I thought to ourselves, foolishly, that, after we get married, it won't be an issue anymore, because we're gonna be having sex all the time, and so we don't have to think about that anymore. And that was true for about 6 months. About 6 months into our marriage, she found out that I was still watching pornography. And it crushed her. I mean, just destroyed her. And I remember talking to her, her crying, me crying, of just seeing that type of destruction that close to it. It was like, I'm never doing this again. And as much as I thought that to myself, I didn't do anything about it. I just thought that, this feeling feels terrible, and this feeling will be able to keep me away. It did for a while, but not permanently. We had our first kid together, and I had a real come to Jesus moment there of, I have a daughter now. I can't be doing this stuff. This is someone else's daughter that I'm looking at. This isn't right. And I thought, all right, this is it, no more. I didn't do anything. And so that feeling only lasted so long. Had another kid, and then another kid, and then another. We had 4 kids. You guys know that. There's a lot of kids. There were a lot of rededications through that whole thing, and it lasted for a little bit, but never lasted entirely. After we had Sophia, through all this time, it wasn't like I was like some deviant. I was very much involved in our church family. I was our unpaid youth leader And I was volunteering, doing things at camp, and all of these religious things. No one knew. And so after Sophia was born, I had been contemplating it for a long time, because I thought, man, I think I want to try doing ministry full time. I think God's given me an ability and some talents to be able to be a good minister full time. And so we went to Bear Valley. And this isn't the reason why I went to Bear Valley, but I thought to myself, man, this will take care of my porn problem. Because we'll be studying the Bible 8 hours a day, and when I'm not at school, then I'll be at home writing papers and studying and doing study groups. And while all of that was true, all of that actually happened, turns out preaching school is actually a very high-stress environment. You're trying to get a 4-year degree in 2 years, and they make you feel it there. It is hard. It is so difficult and so stressful. That what I thought was going to happen with my pornography problem was actually the exact opposite. Is perhaps maybe the worst or the lowest that I'd ever been in my life. About 6 months from graduation, it was like we knew where we were going. We were going to be a youth minister in Ohio, and it was like, I don't know. I thought this to myself of, everyone's going to be looking to me for answers. Everyone's going to be looking to me for help. And I felt I'm the one that needs the most help here. I'm supposed to be helping others, and I can't help myself. I thought in my lowest that there's got to be a special place in hell for people like me, for the hypocrites. Around the same time, before we graduated, we were walking through a Christian bookstore down in Denver. I don't know if it's still there. It's called Mardell's. And through this whole time, I've been reading books on pornography addiction and trying to get help myself, but nothing. I mean, most of those books, they tell you how bad it is, and I already knew that, but they don't really tell you, hey, this is what you got to do to get it. And I found another book, and I thought to myself, well, what could it hurt? Reading another one. So I did. And in this book, it detailed a very specific kind of accountability that I had never tried before, mainly because I was deathly afraid of going to that degree of actually telling someone else about my problem. And I thought, all right, this is the Hail Mary moment here. And so I bought 2 more books. I mailed them to 2 of my friends who I also knew struggled with pornography. And I told them, read this book, and I want to talk to you after you read it. And after that, we started our first Overcome accountability group. And I'll tell you, things haven't been perfect, but anyone that has been a part of an Overcome accountability group will tell you that it is much, much, much better. And that's when Alicia and I started this journey of openness and honesty and overcoming. And that's why we go to all of these churches. Alicia talks to the women when we go, because we view this as something very important, not only to us, but we know that there are other people out there who are struggling, who have no answers for them. And isn't that typical, though, that the answer usually lies in the one thing we're not willing to do? So, why do I tell my story? Why did I just do that? Why did I put you guys through that? Number one, I truly, truly believe in the power of confession and intimacy. That it changes people. And not just in this one area, in all aspects of life. If you want to lose weight, tell someone about it. Have them keep you accountable. Hey, I'm at the gym. Where are you? Right? That kind of accountability. You want to stay on the diet? Tell someone about it. You want a better marriage? Practice confession and forgiveness. I'm actually telling, like, hey, I did this, I'm sorry, and then actually forgiving and moving on. It will help your marriage. You want to read more? You want to get into a better habit of reading? Tell someone about it. Say, I want to read more. Can you help? Can you keep me accountable? Can you ask me about what I'm reading from time to time? Can you make sure that I'm staying on task? And you know what? The more people that I tell my story to, the less of a grip of the shame of my past has on me. For those that I've helped, and they maybe for the first time ever have the opportunity to tell their story, no holds barred, the full thing, they feel this weight just lifting off of their shoulders, and it's real. Many people don't get the opportunity to do that. I believe in the power of confession and intimacy. Number two, why do I tell my story? Because I believe the leaders in our church need to lead by example. Preachers always ask, why don't people come forward and confide in me? Why don't people come show weakness? And I always ask preachers when they do that, well, have you shown weakness? Why would they do something that you're not willing to do? I think leaders in our church need to lead by example, to show this is what happens, this is what we do when we fall. We don't cover it up. We take responsibility for it, and we do better. One of the best things that church leaders can do for their congregation is to show them what weakness looks like, what courage looks like. In counseling circles, we have this saying, courage begets courage, right? Courage begets courage. Because if you've ever been in a group counseling setting, this is how it happens every single time. Everyone looks around at each other, and everyone's like, I don't know these people. I'm not going to tell them anything about me until that first domino falls. Someone gets real, and someone actually talks about the things that they struggle with, and the other person goes, if they can, I don't want to leave them alone in this circle of shame by themselves, and so I'm going to join them. This is what's happened to me. This is what I've experienced. And then it's like then you can't get people to shut up when it's like, all right, it's time. Like we got to get out of here. Stop talking. Is because it just goes around and around and around. Courage begets courage. And I want our church to be so courageous in this community that people will look at it and go, there's no way they can do this stuff without God. Right? If we can do this, we'll be connecting with people on an entirely different level. And this is what changes people. Saying to them, I'm messed up. You're messed up. Let's get through this life together. Number 3 reason, why do I tell my story? It's because I know that I'm not alone. Every aspect of my story, it might have been difficult to listen to, but just know that the statistics are on my side of this, and that if you haven't experienced at least a part of my story, you're in the minority. And so, because I know that I'm not alone in my story, I tell everyone that I can. People can relate to my story, and if that is true for anyone in this room, know that I'm with you. I know what it feels like. The chances are, there's many people in this room right now who you would never know who experienced things like I experienced, and that is both a sad and a beautiful thing. It's sad in that I'm sorry that you've had to endure this for your entire life, probably alone. But it's a beautiful thing, and that's why God gave us the church, so that we don't have to go through it alone. The church is not a solo gig. So, pornography addiction is real. It affects us. And the sooner we can get to discuss it, to be open to talk about it, and just acknowledge that this is a real thing, the faster we're going to be able to help people. Because I can guarantee you, if not for the people that are in our church, for those who are out in the community are suffering and circling the drain, and they don't know why, and they don't know that there's help. And we can be that help. In our next session next week, we're going to talk about the cycle of addiction. Why is pornography addiction a thing? How does it happen? What are the statistics? What is the science behind it? We're going to look at all of that involving addiction. Thank you very much for listening to my story. I hope that it helped. We're going to say a prayer, and then we'll be dismissed from our class this morning. Dear Heavenly Father, God, thank you so much for today. God, thank you for your church, that it is alive and well here in Cheyenne, Wyoming. God, sometimes the struggles that we face are difficult and dark. And God, it can set in our hearts just a fear about them, that we don't want to deal with it. And God, I pray that we can be courageous, that we can stand up to and stand against that fear, that we would do things your way, that we would confess sin one to another so that we might be healed. God, that we can be the light shining in the darkness, that we would do things the way that you would want us to do them. God, thank you for the forgiveness that is offered through your Son. And help us to never lose sight of that. God, please be with us now as we enter into a time of worship, that we can set aside all of the cares and concerns of our heart, and we can just worship you openly and freely the way that you desire and what you deserve. God, we thank you so much. It's in your Son's name that I pray.